So Trevor Bischoff running for county council. Thanks for coming on Time with Uncle Sam.
Thanks for having me.
And other than the podcast we did with the Stop Solar Dearborn County group, is this your first time being on a podcast?
Yes, it is.
All right.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show business, I guess. So for people who, I'm sure you've probably seen some of my content before, and I started doing these about 2 years ago when some relative of yours, is like second cousin or whatever, Dwayne Bischoff, I sat down with his shop, and we didn't even have nice mics, which these are like cheapo $20 mics, but we were just cell phone, sitting in an area, trying to overcome and change something about Dearborn County politics, which is this. There's a lot of good people in our county. That's one of the things that has kept me here. But just because somebody's a good person doesn't mean that their vision for the county or how government should work is necessarily reflective of you.
Right.
And so one of the things that I think has escalated in recent years, especially at a federal level, and I'm sure you probably agree with this, is it's like the two groups, red, blue, are getting further and further apart. And it's almost the system rewards demonizing the other side instead of coming together and providing solutions. And so one of the things that I wanted to change, this is I guess an objective of mine for county government and grassroots politics, is that we get rid of the name recognition and the ignorant vote, and we can have a platform where people can sit down and talk.
Right.
And so one of my missions with this podcast is 10 years down the road from now, we can have somebody who has no name recognition, just moved to the county, a year ago, but maybe they're the most qualified person to serve us as constituents in a certain role, and they don't need name recognition because there's a place and a platform where people can come together and talk about issues that affect their everyday life, offer the solutions that they think they bring as a candidate, and voters can conveniently and cheaply, or at no cost, which is, social media allows us to do that, can get their message out. And so I've actually been looking forward to this a lot for two reasons. One, I've been helping with your campaign and backing you on some different things, and I really encouraged you to run, and proudly did that. I think this guy is awesome. I think we're better with Bischoff. I will absolutely say that. I'm very biased in this race. But even with, I think we met, 2 years ago?
Yeah, close to 2 years ago.
2 years ago, and we sat down, had a conversation. No, I think I was looking for people precinct. I think we met in your garage.
Yes, correct.
It's dark
garage,
at night.
Dark.
Under
lights.
like some greasy, oily bench. You had to move a chainsaw on. I'm like, hey, this is how the party works, and this is why we need people involved. And I don't think I talked to you again for a year. And then I think you got on redevelopment board. I talked to you a couple times. And then I talked to you about running for office because I liked how you've conducted yourself on that board. I thought you've been the kind of people I want to see and the kind of conduct I want to see in people elected to county office. I saw exemplified with how you conducted yourself on that board. And so, but I really know very little about your background, your story, whatever else. So if the camera is the third person at the coffee table, right? You had your coffee with a councilman, somebody who doesn't know you, you've never talked to him, sits down and says, hey, 5 minutes, what's your story? Born, raised, where'd you grow up at? Give me your story of to today. What's the 5-minute version of
5 minutes? All right. So 32 years old. Let's see here. Born and raised in basically entirety of my life in St. Leon, Indiana. One of 5. So I have one brother and 3 sisters, second oldest. Went to Sunman Elementary. Actually went to the intermediate school at Sunman Dearborn while it existed for a hot minute. Sunman Dearborn Middle School, East Central High School, graduated in 2011. In high school, I wrestled. That was my primary sport that I did.
How much did you weigh in high school?
189 pounds is what I wrestled at.
Really?
So, yeah.
It's a pretty big weight class, isn't it?
It was, yes. 189.
I'm trying to imagine you in wrestling. All my uncles, my mom grew up on a dairy farm in Illinois, and all of my uncles were apple sold, and they were all 110, 120 pounds, and now they're all 6'2", 210. Well, it's they didn't grow until college or something.
Well, I grew a little bit in college. I think I was pretty tall in high school. I think I grew after high school as well.
All right.
Yeah. A lot of local ties to the community.
Okay.
So, like I said, I've been telling
Tell me about your parents. What they do growing up?
So-
Born to parents work for corporate, small business. What's that like?
My mom was a stay-at-home mom. Lucky to have that. Looking back now, as something I wish that my children had, but my wife works now. But then my father, he's been self-employed since 1983 or 5 or something like that. He's owned a race engine shop of all things. So he builds custom engines, mostly for motorsport, drag racing, dirt drags, pulling trucks, things of that nature, and has built quite the reputation of being probably one of the best engine builders in the country.
Wow.
So I grew up helping him quite a bit. Started out cleaning equipment, cleaning the shop, things of that nature. Didn't really enjoy that very much.
No.
I can't imagine most people would, but and learned quite a bit from him. I was very lucky to have both my mother and father at home guiding me along the way, and very blessed.
Exiting high school, what was your trajectory looking at? College, career, what were you thinking? What's that story?
I graduated and I decided to pursue a degree in mechanical engineering. I went to Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology and was there a little over 4 years.
Where are they out of? I know the name.
So it's Terre Haute, Indiana. Is where
Oh,
they're
okay,
at.
yeah.
We like to tell everyone we're the best engineering school in Indiana and the nation for a lot of undergraduate programs. So a lot of people, if they know what Rose-Hulman is, they always piques their ears a little bit when I tell them where I graduated from. Through that, I did quite a few interesting things. I had a lot of interesting co-ops and internships and jobs. I've worked at Toyota in quality engineering at the Princeton, Indiana plant. I really enjoyed that. I learned quite a bit about manufacturing. I worked for a defense contractor in Johnstown, Pennsylvania called Concurrent Technologies Corporation, CTC, and I worked primarily with metallurgy or materials engineering, dealing with combining different technologies to be able to do armor repairs for battleships and Humvees and things of that nature. Cool. Worked for my dad for a brief period of time.
This is all after college?
This is during, and most of this is during college. All these are currently during college. Worked for my dad. We started making build and intake manifolds there. Did a few other things. I worked actually for an engineering firm when I was in school through Rose-Hulman called Rose-Hulman Ventures. We designed all sorts of stuff there. And then my first real job coming out of college was I designed ice plants for a company in Cincinnati.
You what?
Yeah, design ice plants. Believe it or not, you don't think
ice plants.
Yeah, so when you go to a gas station or convenience store and you buy a bag of ice, that was made at a factory or a plant.
Okay.
It's this thing that most people don't think about because we have ice we make in our
Yeah.
refrigerator, right? Well, that's now everything that you make on an industrial scale normally involves industrial size equipment. So some of these facilities were massive, and we had vendors like Home City Ice or Ready Ice, where it was just their facilities were just ice and production and bagging plants. But then a lot of our customers were like turkey farms. They all have ice plants, or not farms, but turkey processing or meat processing facilities generally have ice plants on site to cool the meat. Not a glamorous job, not a job that I really enjoyed. That's where I really figured out.
So you guys built the machines?
No,
industrial scale?
We didn't build the machines, we built the plants. So there are basically two companies that make these ice machines of varying sizes, and it's tube and plate ice, and I go off into left field and talk about that, but I think that's a little outside of what we're talking about. But we take their equipment, pair it with different refrigeration equipment, construct a building, and palletizing and production and bagging equipment. Like, we just basically took all these parts.
So you build the assembly line
and assembled it. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So it was.
So when did you move back to this area? Right after college? What?
Yeah. So when I decided,
so you're 33 now, or 30?
32. I'll be 33 in like 2 weeks.
Okay. So 30, 32. So my same age. So get out of school at 22. What did you do for a decade out of college?
So I worked in only engineering for like 2 years, I want to say. And then that was all at that same job with that the company that designed those and sold ice plants. And other things revolving around ice. I did not like that job. That was probably one of the worst jobs I ever had. I decided that the corporate life wasn't for me. So shortly after, I had the opportunity to work with my grandfather in real estate and some of our other businesses in the periphery of real estate, such as real estate investing. And who doesn't like working with their grandparents, right?
Yeah.
Or their family. And I didn't mention...
Especially grandparents. There's
Yeah.
very few people who have that chance.
Yeah, my grandfather was always my biggest supporter. I mean, when I was in high school, if I did anything, if I went to a wrestling match, he was there. If I'm an Eagle Scout, so a lot of my scouting events, he was there. So I was very fortunate to have a grandfather like that in my life, and still have a great relationship with him to this day. Fortunate to still have him. And so for the past 7, 8, 9 years, I can't remember now, but I'm working with him.
Awesome. What does, so I remember talking to you about politics 2 years ago, like, hey, we need good, everyday, common sense people to get involved who don't have an agenda. Going back to me 2 years ago, my introduction to politics was, certain people are told who to vote for. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of musical chairs, and I'm not saying this is my opinion today, but back when I first met you, I'm like, this is what I saw, this is what I experienced, and I don't understand how we're going to have quality government. And I've heard my whole life, oh, it's just some good old party down there. Outsiders don't win. And I saw how things were working, and I said, you can absolutely have a grassroots effort that gets control of their government again and has representative government. And I remember talking to you, and you'll be like, dude, I got like young kids, I got a business, or I'm working in business, I got so much stuff going on. Like, I've never wanted to be in politics. Yes, I vote. Yeah, I care. And then I've seen you kind of get involved. I know you had no aspirations to get involved in politics. Mm-hmm. If you go back to the person you were when we first met, like not getting involved, whatever else, what would you say are, from that version of Trevor 2 years ago, what are the top 2 things that you think government should give, or maybe your 2 biggest things that come to mind when you thought about Dearborn County government? And then how has that changed? My follow-up question would be, how has that changed 2 years later after having gotten involved, serving on a board, getting more involved in how things actually work? What's that mindset shift go from?
I think back 2 years ago, I think a lot of people would, I was very similar to most people in this county. The county isn't ran poorly. We're not in a position where we're constantly running out of money, or there's a lot of projects that need to be addressed or issues that need to be addressed. Overall, I think we're ran fairly well, but there are issues in the county, and if you're not directly involved with those issues, or they don't affect you, it's easy not to see them. And so we have over the past 4, 5, 6 years, there's been several big ticket items that have come through that have affected the lives of most people in this county. Whether that's we had a lot of updates to our zoning ordinances in this county, which affected people with what they could and could not do with their property, rezones, taxes. That was kind of one of the big things that came through. Nobody knew about it. It affected us. What can we do about it, sort of thing. We had Link 101. The most recent thing being the solar farms that have come through. And once you open your eyes up to what's happening in the county, you start to take, you have concern with like, what can we do to better protect ourselves or listen to the citizens of the county when they have a concern. And that's probably the biggest shift that I've seen. You mentioned the redevelopment board. One of the things that we've seen continuously come through this county is TIF districts, right? TIF is a controversial thing. It's a tool like everything else. You can use a tool right, you can use a tool wrong, and we have a tendency to TIF a lot of our problems away. And that may not be the best course of action in a lot of cases. So with the Dillsboro TIF, that was, I'd already been on the redevelopment board, but that was kind of my first big moment where I'm like, hey, maybe we need to look at how we're doing things. There was quite a few upset residents that came to that meeting, and their concerns, it felt like a lot of them were falling on deaf ears.
Right.
We were able to, that TIF never went into effect though. So that was one of the good outcomes.
Right.
But that was probably the biggest change. Is actually once you get involved in seeing what's going on in the county, it's easy to see, hey, we can make improvements in this area or this area.
So going back to redevelopment board, what is something that you have learned about county government that you didn't know when you first got involved a year ago?
So one of the things I find interesting, the redevelopment commission is all made up of appointed members. A lot of them, they come in with diverse backgrounds, because particularly redevelopment, you're dealing with a large range of issues, whether that's property acquisition and sale, different zoning ordinance, legal statutes, maybe with TIF. But you're all coming in with these different backgrounds, but you may not understand the whole picture of how something works. Like I did not. I thought I had a decent picture of how TIF mechanics worked and some of the statutes revolving around TIF, but I learned a lot more after we started the hearings for the Dillsboro TIF. We had quite a few individuals from the county, citizens in the county, come forward, and I actually learned a lot from them in what talking about their concerns with TIF. And I think that's one of the biggest learnings. Like, the people in county government may not necessarily have everything figured out and have looked at everything from the different angles. And I've learned that the citizens themselves provide valuable insight into these different issues. It's very easy to get, the term is groupthink, when it's just the same 7 people, in this case of redevelopment, looking at the issues.
Right.
So,
going back to one question I think is always interesting to ask people is, who is one of your greatest heroes in life and why?
It's a good question. So if I had just pick like everyday people, it would be my grandfather, Clifford Bischoff. Like I said, he was always there for me growing up. The man has, he started the real estate company. Every business that he started from nothing. Like, he's just, was a farmer, farmed for a while, got a job at Cincinnati Incorporated, said, hey, I can sell real estate. Worked under a gentleman named Eddie Serber in Harrison for a while, and a couple years later started his own business, took off. He had, I think, something like 80, 90 agents, 3 offices, and just really grew a business from nothing to something. Same thing with our property investment group that we have. So he's just,
what's one of his greatest character traits that affected you, that has, because you get into, there's a saying that one of my business coaches told me, and life mentors. He said, Sam, where the men go, so goes the nation. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of feminists out there who hate that phrase. Doesn't really matter. You're either the biggest blessing to your family or the biggest curse, right. But no man is irrelevant. Mm-hmm. Even if you're absent, that's one of the worst things you can do, And even if you're not a perfect dad, great, at least you're not an absent dad. Because, it doesn't matter what you do as a father, you impact generations. When you look at the formative years of you going from boyhood to manhood, what was one of your grandpa's greatest character traits that affected you the most, that's maybe been a foundational block for you? And
So one of the things that I love about him is he's a straight shooter. He doesn't beat around the bush. He's always telling the truth, and he's going to tell you what he thinks. I think we need more people like that. There's a lot of people who are people pleasers, but I'd rather deal with a person I know where they're at. I know I'm getting the truth, versus someone who may tell me what I want to hear. Right? You can only move forward if you know you're getting the truth. Right. You can only make the best decisions based off of true information.
Cool. So, what do you think are the 2 biggest issues? A lot of people talk about the next couple years. What do you think of the 2 biggest issues over the next 10 years that we as a county are going to face? From the perspective of, if you're 80 years old, sitting at this table, you've got one set of concerns. If you're in your 50s, you maybe have a different set of concerns, like, hey, I got to max out my retirement the next decade because I want to retire at 59 and a half or 62, or whenever I'm tapping this stuff. I want to make sure I have enough that I can keep up with inflation, whatever else. But as a young man with young family, and you're looking at another 30 years to retirement, you're probably putting money away into investments, but you're not thinking of the sense of urgency from that perspective. Right. You're thinking of the sense of urgency of, I want to make sure I don't let my kids down. I want to make sure I have a good marriage. I need to take care of this financial stuff. I want to be in shape. Like these different irons, these plates that we spin. From a young man's perspective, as you look at the county over the next 10 years, what do you think are the 2 biggest topics that, to be an informed voter, we need to be thinking about?
I think so. Given where we are geographically, we're considered basically an outer lying region or suburb of Cincinnati. If you look what is coming through Ohio and headed this way, that's what we're dealing with. Do a lot of business in Harrison, Ohio, Hamilton County. They have just overdeveloped that whole area in the past 5 or 6 years.
That recently?
Yeah, there's probably been, since the...
How have they done that?
Well, it's mostly through housing. They have added thousands of homes in different developments throughout the Harrison area. Great example of this is they built all brand new schools 3 or 4 years ago. And as soon as one of the elementary schools was finished, it was already not large enough for the students that it served. So, and it's just, they have this basically just rapid growth. And that is coming this direction. We see it a lot.
What do you think is pushing that? Is Cincinnati growing that much, or people are vacating Cincinnati? They don't
I think part of it is you got some people are moving in the region, but then you also have people leaving Cincinnati. It's a lot of like Bright 20, 30 years ago, right? It was a lot of people moving from Harrison because people were moving from Cincinnati. And so people were gradually moving to the less populated areas because that's what they're looking for. But the problem is that the development always tends to follow them slowly. And so I think that is going to be one of the issues we look forward. We need to have a plan in place to figure out, hey, development's coming. How do we develop this county smartly so that we have the business and infrastructure that we need to do growth, but also have at the same time have a good tax base coming in? Because Hamilton County, one of the problems is a dollar for dollar. If you look at Hamilton County and Dearborn County, if you have a home worth X amount of dollars in each county, Hamilton County is probably going to pay twice as much in property tax.
Yeah.
And that's a huge deal. I mean, there's a lot of people that move over here because we have low taxes.
I had a customer who moved here 2019 or something. This is before the spikes went up. They bought 28 acres and a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot house. They were putting a 1,200 square foot master suite on the house. The house was actually, the guy who sold the house was a friend of mine. And when he told me what he sold it for, I was like, dude, you made bank on your house. The number is what I was thinking. And so this guy who bought the house is now a firewood customer of mine. He comes to buy firewood. We're talking, oh yeah, you bought something? Yeah, he's a friend of mine, He proceeds to tell me that in Hamilton County, the house that they had that was paid off, his taxes on that house were more money than coming out here, financing this $500,000 piece of property, and the taxes, insurance, and payment on it. I said, oh, did you just pay cash for this? He's like, no, I sold that house, my home. I kept all the money. I just dumped it into my retirement accounts. He's like, and I moved out here, and even paying my mortgage and insurance out here is less than my tax bill was over there. He's like, and I had 3 acres or something over there, and I've got like 28 acres over here. It's just interesting the way that works out. What do you think the second biggest issue is that we need to be thinking about?
I think probably there's a few that come to mind that kind of tie back into a lot of the development of the county and just keeping other issues, just being able to not have insanely high taxes and still meet the residents' needs. Probably one of them it's going to be more of an urgent need, and it's a good thing overall. Like we've had the state Senate and the state House say, hey, we're going to try to give people a break on property taxes. So in doing so, there's now kind of the budget for the county is shrunk.
Right.
So we have to figure out how to still provide the essential services, fire, EMS, all the county government, maintaining our roads with a smaller budget. Right, and there's many different options to do that. Franklin County to the north of us, they passed a wheel tax. That's going to be something that needs to be addressed. Are they going to pass a wheel tax? Do we have enough money to take care of our roads? So I think that's going to be the next thing that comes along, is addressing, is work, and you have to work with the citizens to do this. What are we going to do with our budget? Are we just going to start cutting things? Are we not going to start cutting things? Are we going to levy other taxes? And that's probably the more immediate. This is coming in a couple of years versus the developments. Probably we're looking decades.
20 years from now, what do you hope Dearborn County still looks like?
I hope it still has a very strong rural identity. I think, like I said, I think I'm sixth generation here. And so when I grew up, there wasn't a whole lot of homes in St. Leon. It was still very much so, 40, 50 acre farms with one single family residence on it. I hope we can maintain a good sense of that. And then still preserving our small communities as well, like the town of Manchester, Morris Hill, these small towns that are out there,
Right.
That they still exist. Maybe we see some growth in those towns, maybe some, maybe restaurants or small stores in those towns, keep those
Right.
towns going, but still have a strong sense of the identity it has today.
Right. Well, there's a big difference between St. Leon and Morris Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And District 4 covers both of those.
Right.
What is, if elected, what's one of the ways you still plan on being able to stay connected to people?
Well, the big thing is actually engaging with the residents of these communities, right? Whether that's, you go to a fish fry in York Ridge, right? And you just talk to the people that are out there. And the same thing in Morris Hills. You have to understand what those residents want for those areas. So it's actually just engaging with them on anywhere that you can, for the most part.
I would say from somebody who grew up in, like, between Aurora and Morris Hill, the only thing I wanted from the county was just do things honestly. I don't want to hear of things that the street would call corrupt. Mm-hmm. When people have issues, hear people out and don't have some underlying objective to stuff. Mm-hmm. And the third thing is do whatever you can to stay out of my way. Yeah. Like I don't know if that's what Jackson Township or Logan is, but over in Hogan and Sparta, it's kind of the feel like we live out here because we don't want to be bugged. Like, just leave us alone.
And that's most of the rural parts of this county, right? That's why those people moved out there and
Right.
they live there. So,
when you think about, because part of this comes into play with, you've been on redevelopment board. If you get elected to council, what I think one of the most important things council does is the appointments to boards. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of different boards. I had no idea how many boards even existed in Dearborn County. And at first, when you're just coming from like a civilian perspective, you think, what in the world do they need all these boards for? And then you start going to some of these board meetings and you go, oh, wait, this is actually pretty cool. There's more than 3 commissioners and 77 councilmen mm-hmm. who actually run this county. There's actually like 50 to 100 people. And it's neat to see, unless you have the same people appointed to all the boards, mm-hmm. right? Or you've got enough people on each of the boards where you have majority control on enough of the boards where you can push anything through you want and people can't have any setback. If you actually flood that market with a lot of different backgrounds, perspectives, and have an open door to people coming in and engaging and having debate and letting the political process play out, you really do wind up with a grassroots government mm-hmm. and having different boards kind of create that. What do you think are the 2 biggest boards that affect your life, you, your wife and kids and family and their future? What are the 2 biggest boards that affect everyday life?
I'd say for most people, your number one's going to be planning and zoning.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's just by nature of they're following the comp plan to make sure that the zoning matches their comp plan, and then that steers what happens and what the future development in the county is going to be like. And also, like, if you wanted to build a house or a pole barn or any sort of accessory structure remodel, you're going to be contacting that department at the county to deal. That's going to be most people's first interaction with the county.
Okay.
At some level is probably planning and zoning. In a lesser sense, probably redevelopment. Redevelopment, you're not going to probably interact with them, but what redevelopment does is going to impact a lot of people in the county. They just may not be aware of how. So, and that's with the TIF districts, but also any business that works and develops maybe an EDA with the redevelopment board, and that's tax dollars brought in some capacity.
Okay.
So, an opportunity for jobs and other economic growth.
One of the things, at the TIF meeting that Commissioner Bischoff put on last week, he had talked about, or the people who were doing the training, they said a lot of the times we've seen TIFs used in a bad way. We're not necessarily used in a bad way where they get maybe a bad rap, is when people aren't really clear about they're just offering a TIF to anyone instead of being specific about what they're trying to attract. Yeah. What kind of industry would you be looking to attract if you were appointing people to the redevelopment board, or you stay on the redevelopment board? What do you think fits with Dearborn County? Are we heavily manufacturing? Are we heavily, tech stuff? For me, I never really thought about this. Now I've sat at some of these meetings and I've seen some of this stuff come through, and I never thought about like a turkey plant, but I thought that's pretty cool. Yeah. Like when I think about having a strong Indiana, that means having food that's processed locally. I want that locally. I want energy local. The more we can have control at a local level, I think the freer we are as a people. But I never really thought about a meat processing facility. The only perspective I had was the business owners that I knew around me were people who started with nothing and they built something on their own. And the government didn't give them anything. They did it on their own, and they were complaining they were paying too many taxes on stuff the government didn't help them with anyway, or that the government just got in their way and was paying the rear end. And so from a small business perspective, I think as long as we create free enterprise and a good community, which as long as we don't destroy this area will always have a positive zone because we're near a place that's got a lot of business. And everybody always wants to come here. There's always an automatic draw to get away from the city, but that has access. Now, if we destroy that and then we lose that rural feel, I think we lose our competitive edge. I think our rural feel is one of the greatest things. And in rural feel, you tend to have some more small businesses. But I grew up across the street from the people who owned the Aurora Casket Company, and now it's sold to somebody else and sold to a private equity firm, or I don't even know what it is anymore. But what kind of industry? Your experience in manufacturing, what kind of industry is ideal for this area?
It depends exactly where you're talking about.
Like if you were king for a day, that's my Sunday school teacher always used to say that. If I were king for a day, I was like, I know the whole world would be perfect. If you were king for a day, what's one thing, if you could snap your fingers and bring it into Dearborn County?
One thing. I'd say what I would like to see currently, and this could change, but I'd like to see anything that we have, a great asset that's sitting there doing nothing. And from what I've been told is Aurora Casket, there's one person that currently working there and the plant's not running. So getting something in that facility that's actually, whether it's producing, it's probably great for some sort of manufacturing, but something to come in there, start producing some sort of good that can then be exported to...
Oh, the old Aurora Casket building you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's just an asset that's sitting there, right? Like it's...
The infrastructure's already there.
The infrastructure's already there. We're not taking virgin ground from somewhere else and developing that. It's already there. So let's take what we have and utilize it to our best ability. So I think that is a place that could be leveraged and possibly bring maybe more manufacturing or something. I think that would go very well in that particular spot.
Gotcha. How old's your oldest?
My oldest is 6.
Okay, so 16 years from now, he's 22, graduating college. What kind of Dearborn County do you want him to have an option to live and put his roots down in? What do you think? What are you hoping is still here, or what are the top 3 things that you're hoping is still here?
Again,
because a lot of times, you make decisions in government, and you look at this at a federal level because this makes sense. People equate things to a federal level. People always say, "Oh, well, the last administration was horrible," and some of that's true, and some of that's just PR crap, But some of this stuff, you look back, and some of it's not the last administration; it's 2 administrations ago,
right,
or 3, like 20 years ago, or 10 years ago. And so when you think of that perspective, and you come back to county government, you can look at a situation and go, "Wow, okay, who we elect to county council, and what they believe is really important. We can't just afford to put a good guy. Oh yeah, he's a good guy." Okay, no, what do they believe? What's their stance on certain situations? Do they even have a stance? That's been my biggest alarming concern when I got involved, is a lot of good people, they just don't have any kind of framework about, there's no conviction or current political mindset when it comes to the politics of the local county. It's just, oh, this sounds like a great idea. and nobody's actually vetting this and discussing it. In some of the free development meetings I've seen, or council meetings I've seen, or even commissioner meetings, you go and you watch a vote happen, and I go, did somebody have some private meeting behind closed doors before this? Because there was no discussion on that. Like, you have a council for a reason, you have a board for a reason. There's supposed to be like debate and a mastermind and putting 2 heads together or 7 heads together or whatever it is, and really hashing some of this stuff out. And a lot of times those decisions are already made, and you ask the person later and they go, well, I kind of saw this angle and I kind of saw this angle, and they don't really have any foundation. It's like, yeah, this is a good idea today. And so when you come back to government and decisions you make today, thinking about your kids 16 years from now, your oldest, what are the top 3 things that you are hoping are still here in Dearborn County?
Well, I hope
my greatest fear as a dad is building a home here, having tons of memories, and 10, 20 years from now, this county isn't what my kids grew up in, and they don't want to live here and they want to move elsewhere, and then we're either selling the home we created lifelong memories in, or our kids don't want to live around here because it's not the county they grew up in. Like, that's my biggest, if that's going to be the case, why don't I just move now and go put my roots down someplace where I can go live 30, 40 years? And my needs are put before the needs of whoever else might move into my county. Like, so from that perspective, because that's my greatest fear, so for your kids, what do you hope is still here for them in 15 years?
So in 15 years, I really hope the county still has a lot of that rural heritage preserved. I think that is the backbone of most of our county. So, and if that leaves, it's going to look, eventually it'll just look like an extension of Cincinnati for the most part. I do hope that there's plenty of opportunity for them to work here, and have good paying jobs, particularly in the county. I know a lot of people around here will commute to Hamilton County or Cincinnati. Some people commute to Indianapolis, but it'd be nice to have more local options. That was one of the things that I faced coming, having a fresh engineering degree. Since GE laid off like 1,600 engineers or some astronomical number, Baxter wasn't it was challenging to find a job and I had some experience with the number of co-ops and internships that I had. But, the term they use is brain drain. But there needs to be opportunities to have good jobs locally. And additionally, there needs to be housing, right? Like, we need to have affordable housing for people's children to come back and live here. So.
Okay, cool. Anything else you want to talk about?
Nothing that comes to mind.
What's been one of your, I don't know how to say this. You go through college, and most people get liberalized in college, or they start paying attention in college. Like, they go one ditch to the other. What's one of the biggest, or most, like, what was the fork in the road for you? Because you're a pretty conservative guy. Yeah. I knew that when I first, there's a line in the sand. Like, for me, whenever Obama got elected the first time, I was actually in Chicago, really? in suburbs of Chicago. We were driving home, I think, from like visiting my grandma or somebody else. My parents had longtime friends in Chicago. My parents did like an internship in college, basically in Chicago. So they had like connections with friends of the family. It's like somebody passing through. So we were staying at these people's houses, and it was the night of the election. And I saw Obama's speech. And I remember it was that, and they were like replaying other clips of speeches that he had. And I remember, because I started my first business in 2006. I was a 13-year-old kid. I had a lawn care business. And my older siblings and my parents laughed at me and joked, oh, Sam's going to have this lawn care business, whatever. 21, I'd passed my dad up in income. He had a PhD and made really good money, or decent, what I thought was really good money. And I passed him up mowing lawns. So it was like my vindication. But I was this young, struggling kid that didn't even have the support of my family. Most of my family harassed me and made fun of me because I didn't come from a family of business owners. It was like, no, that's not, you need to go to school, get a good education, get a good, safe, secure job. My parents were totally foreign to the idea of business ownership and self-employment. And I remember these clips playing because he hadn't won yet. They hadn't counted all the votes, and they're like replaying clips of speeches. And one of the speeches was him coming out talking about, like these big businesses, like they think that they should get to keep all this money, blah, blah, blah. And, Obama's talking. It was something to the effect of, don't quote me on this because this is 16-year-old me, something to the effect of, you didn't build that business. Your employees did, your banker did, whatever else. And I'm this 16-year-old kid busting my butt just to be able to afford the next piece of broke equipment to scale my business up. You know, like the most fundamental, like you can't get much lower than what I was at. And I remember turning around going like, where was Obama at when I was building my business? I didn't have any employees. It was me. There was no bank. I paid my parents to rent their lawnmower, and then I paid cash for my own crap as it went, you know, like. So I remember that being a line in the sand of government doesn't know what the heck they're talking about. I'm going to build my future. Like that was a pivotal moment for me.
So
what was a pivotal moment for you?
Right.
Getting a basis for conservative values.
So I wouldn't say there was one. And because of how engaged I was with my grandfather and my father growing up, as them both being small business owners, I had a very, you know, I wasn't listening to the news and the liberalized media. I was listening to my father and my grandfather. So I had a pretty conservative upbringing. You know, in college, I don't know if I was president. I know I was definitely vice president of the college Republican chapter at Rose-Hulman.
Oh, really?
So there was never like this pendulum shift from, you know, liberal to conservative or anything like most people have. I've just always had more conservative mindset. Like you said, you know, you experienced a lot of, you know, I built this business when you were building your small business. Well, that's what I was taught from my grandfather and father who built all small businesses. So.
Sweet. Anything else you want to talk about? How'd you meet your wife?
I met her on an online dating app.
Did you pick your kids up at the grocery store, buy them on an online dating app too?
How'd you know?
Oh, good stuff.
No.
All right. Well, what's one way people can get involved and help you out in this campaign? You need donations. You need yard sign locations. You need people to go knock doors. I mean, how can people help?
Anything and everything. You know, I'm not going to turn down help if they want to support me financially or put a yard sign up or knock on doors. I'm more than happy to do it. One thing that people can do just in general to support just themselves: show up to meetings, watch meetings online, or you do a lot of live streams, and just be engaged in what your government is doing. I know a lot of people are engaged in what the federal government is doing, but what we do here on a county level will affect you more than probably just about anything the federal government does.
Sweet. Trevor, welcome to doing
Appreciate
your
it.
first individual podcast, man.